Okay, imagine this. You're driving through a snowstorm, right? And your car's automatic high beams keep flashing on, completely blinding you in the snow. And the only way to turn them off? You have to dig through a bunch of menus on a glassy touchscreen. Now, this isn't some scene out of a sci-fi movie. It's what it's like driving a modern car. So how on earth did we end up here, in a future that we already tried decades ago and hate it?
Believe it or not, our frustration with in-car touchscreens is almost 40 years old. Yeah, back in 1986, the Buick Riviera came out with this super futuristic screen that was supposed to make driving feel like a space odyssey. But as Car and Driver magazine so brutally put it, the reality was a joke. It was clunky, it was slow, and people absolutely hated it.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If this whole idea was such a huge failure back then, why did it come roaring back? Why are our dashboards now just these giant screens that control literally everything, when we already knew it was a clumsy and, frankly, a dangerous idea?
To really get how we got here, we've got to rewind the clock a bit. You see, the dream of a car with no buttons isn't new at all. It's just a recycled idea, and let me tell you, the first version was a spectacular flop.
I mean, you have to admit, this thing was ambitious. The Graphic Control Center. It was revolutionary. The little fan icon would actually spin faster or slower. You could tweak a graphic equalizer. For the 80s, this was insane, high-tech stuff. But it was a total commercial disaster. Sales just tanked. And only 3 years later, the touchscreen was gone. A failed experiment. Or so it seemed.
So if this whole touchscreen car thing was such a dud in the 80s, how did it manage to stage this epic comeback? Well, the answer involves a huge industry shakeup, a little tech company from Silicon Valley, and one specific car that pretty much changed everything.
And it all happened so fast. In 2012, the Tesla Model S hits the scene with its giant 17-inch screen, and just like that, every other car maker started scrambling to catch up. Then, in 2018, a safety rule made backup cameras mandatory, which basically put a screen in every single new car, sealing the deal. By 2023, physical buttons were practically an endangered species.
So with all these screens came this whole new approach to car design. An approach that seemed to care more about looking sleek and minimalist than, making any sense. All of a sudden, the absolute simplest things you do in a car became weirdly complicated and sometimes just plain bizarre.
For example, let's take one of the most basic things you do in a car, putting it in gear. For decades, this was simple. It was universal. But now we've entered the shifter Wild West, where every car company has come up with its own confusing solution to a problem that never even existed.
You've got these dials you have to turn, little stalks that just spring back to the middle so you can't even feel what gear you're in, a whole row of push buttons, and even this weird twister thing hidden behind the steering wheel. It's like you have to learn how to drive all over again every time you get in a different car.
But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to this, the Genesis Crystal Sphere. According to Genesis, this glowing orb is supposed to create an emotional connection with you. When you start the car, it does this little spin and then reveals the gear selector. It's certainly a choice. And here's the best part. Genesis actually had to make a nearly 4-minute-long video just to explain how to put the car into gear. 4 minutes! Look, if you need a YouTube tutorial to figure out one of the most basic parts of driving, you failed as a designer. It's that simple.
And this over-engineering doesn't stop with the shifters. Get this. To open the glove box in a Tesla, you have to tap an icon, go through a menu, tap another button, maybe punch in a PIN code, and after all that, you still have to close it by hand? What was ever wrong with the simple latch?
Okay, so confusing design is one thing. It's frustrating. But this whole shift to software-based cars has a much darker, much more invasive side. Because while you're busy fumbling with a touchscreen, your car is quietly collecting massive amounts of data on you.
A study from the Mozilla Foundation found that car companies can collect a truly staggering amount of your personal information, and it goes way beyond just your name and where you drive. We're talking about your genetic characteristics, your race, your religion, and then there's this, and I'm not making this up. Nissan and Kia's privacy policies say they can collect info about your sex life. So what do they do with all this data? Well, they say right in their policies they can sell it, share it for advertising, or even just hand it over to the government.
The conclusion from the folks who actually study this stuff for a living, it's absolutely damning. They said of every single piece of tech they've ever researched, phones, smart speakers, apps, you name it, cars are the single worst product category for privacy. The worst.
So how are they getting all this info? Well, they're using a network of digital eyes. Just look at the insane number of cameras on a single Tesla Model Y. They're everywhere, and they are constantly recording. And according to a report from Reuters, former Tesla employees said that between 2019 and 2022, videos from customer cars were passed around the office, including crashes, road rage incidents, and even really embarrassing private moments that were captured inside people's own garages.
So, all of this brings us to the most important question of all. Forget the inconvenience, forget the huge privacy invasion for a second. Are these so-called innovations actually making our roads less safe? Think back to that story from the beginning, being blinded by high beams in a snowstorm. That really gets to the core of the problem. With a physical button, you build muscle memory. You can feel for it without looking down, thanks to what they call haptic feedback, that little click or resistance you feel. But a touchscreen is just a flat piece of glass. You have to take your eyes off the road to find what you're looking for, and the whole layout can change with the next software update. It's just a recipe for distraction.
And sometimes that distraction has absolutely tragic consequences. In 2016, the actor Anton Yelchin was killed by his own Jeep Grand Cherokee after it rolled down his driveway. His vehicle was part of a huge recall for its confusing shifter, one of those designs that springs back to the middle, making it dangerously easy to think you've put the car in park when you actually haven't. An investigation later connected that one design flaw to hundreds of crashes and dozens of injuries.
And here's where we get to the hard data. A British road safety study looked at driver reaction times. Being at the legal alcohol limit slowed people down by 12%. Using cannabis slowed them down by 21%. But trying to use a touchscreen with Apple CarPlay? A staggering 57% slower. Let me say that again. Interacting with your car's screen is significantly more impairing than driving drunk.
This right here shows you the real-world impact. A Swedish magazine timed drivers doing simple tasks. In an old Volvo with actual knobs and buttons, it took 10 seconds to adjust the climate control. In a modern car with a touchscreen, that same task took almost 45 seconds. At highway speeds, that means the driver was effectively blind, not looking at the road, for nearly a mile.
But after years of this screen-first madness, there is finally some good news on the horizon. A powerful backlash is building, and it seems like automakers, safety regulators, and drivers are all starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, we've gone too far. And this pushback is coming from all sides. Europe's most important safety agency is about to require physical buttons for key functions if a car wants to get a top safety rating. A recent survey found that the huge majority of drivers want buttons back. And in the biggest sign of all, automakers like Volkswagen are literally admitting they messed up and are bringing buttons back. Their head of design said it perfectly: it's a car, not a phone.
So this is really what it all comes down to. When we see some fancy new shifter or a massive glossy screen, we have to ask ourselves a pretty tough question. Is this feature a real innovation that actually makes driving better? Or is it just a gimmick, a bell and a whistle designed to make a car feel more premium so the company can justify a higher price tag? The next time you're in a car showroom, it's definitely something worth thinking about.